Your rig is where you work, where you rock out. Your rig is your livelihood. So when that DPF light comes on, give your rig the respect it deserves. As for Road Warrior, stronger seals, better manufacturing, and it's made of metal that lasts. Less downtime and more miles on the road so you can haul longer. Respect the rig. Become a Road Warrior.
Welcome to The Long Haul, the podcast dedicated to empowering small carriers and owner-operators to drive their business forward. I'm your host, Adam Wingfield, bringing you insights from industry leaders, real-world success stories, and strategies to help you navigate the road to profitability. Whether you're just getting started or looking to take your fleet to the next level, this is a show where trucking meets opportunity. So buckle up, it's time to go the distance. Welcome back, everybody, to The Long Haul, the show that talks straight to the people moving the country forward, one load at a time. Now, today, we're digging into one of the most frustrating topics in the industry, and one of the most controversial topics, truck parking. And I've got the perfect guest to break it down. Andrew King, who's the Director of Operations at the OOIDA Foundation, joins me today to set the record straight. You've probably seen some headlines recently saying that the truck parking shortage isn't real. So today we're going to challenge that head on. We'll talk about the data, the stories behind the data, and why ultimately the driver voice still matters. If you're a driver who had to park at a Walmart on an off-ramp or fight tooth and nail for a legal spot, this is the episode for you. But before we jump in, please make sure that you like, share, and subscribe to The Long Haul. And don't forget to join the newsletter at www.freightwaves.com/playbook to get the real updates, not just the recycle headlines. So, man, let's just get on to it. Andrew, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Joy to be here.
Let's just dig right on into it, man. You've been with OOIDA for 15 years now. I think that's how long it's been.
Yes. Yep.
What'd you do prior to that?
I was a college student.
Oh, man. So you came in green.
Yeah. This was one of my first major jobs when I worked in college, and I was a dairy frozen manager. And then after I graduated college, I was able to get a job here at OOIDA. And I've been here ever since. I knew very little about trucking. Well, I knew nothing about trucking.
Yeah.
And then since then, I have learned so much. And of course, I'm learning every day just how important the men and women behind the wheel are to just everything we have in this nation. I mean, everything that we're wearing, everything that you eat, everything you get at a store, a truck touched that at some point along the line in the supply chain. And we literally could not operate without them. And also, the job that they do is so hard. It's often thankless. They don't get the thank yous. They often get treated poorly. There's a few bad actors on the road, and I think that gets projected to every trucker.
Sure.
And people don't realize, they're just like us. They're making a living for their families. They're good people. And I've just learned a lot. It's been quite a journey here the last 14, 15 years.
So tell me what really opened your eyes up to the truck parking problem. Was that something that you noticed, when you first started? Was that something that was in your ear when you first got into the industry? Where did your passion behind truck parking come into it?
Well, it's something that our organization has been passionate about for a long time. I mean, of course, anyone driving down the road. I mean, we live in Missouri. Our headquarters are here in just outside of Kansas City, and I have family in St. Louis, and I often make that trip back and forth.
Yeah.
And it's very common to see those rest areas full, to see trucks parked along the side, on the ramp. And then, of course, just a number of unfortunate accidents that have occurred over the years, where people have gotten hurt or even killed, unfortunately, just because someone didn't have a place to park. And then, hearing it from our members directly, it's been such a blessing to have the opportunity to go to like Mid-America Trucking Show and interact with our members face to face and to hear their concerns. And truck parking has always been something that they have been adamant about. It's not enough. They need that in order to do their job, to get the rest they need in order to be staged in an area where they can actually deliver their load in a good amount of time and then get on their way to the next one. And so just hearing their message and their concern about it has kind of opened my eyes to, this is actually a really, really big deal. And they're not just complaining. This is a real thing, and it has real implications.
So let me ask you this then. So there's been a couple of research projects that have been completed, and some of those research projects has concluded that there is no shortage of truck parking. What was your first initial reaction when you saw that?
Well, to be honest, I was a little frustrated, actually. It took me by surprise. For one, if you look at a lot of the research that's been done. For example, the Jason's Law survey, which is also another reason why this has been such a huge issue for us. Jason Rivenberg was actually a member of OOIDA. And for those who are not familiar with the story, he arrived at his drop-off location early, and they didn't have a place for him to park. And so they suggested that he go down the road and park in an unsafe location. And there, someone tried to rob him basically for a few dollars that he had in his pocket, and ended up killing him. And that was something that should never have happened. And so that instituted the Federal Highways Jason's Law truck parking study, and they surveyed like 7,000, 8,000 truck drivers. A lot of them were OOIDA members as well as ATA and ATRI, and like 70% of them said that they have problems finding parking. So to say that there's no truck parking issue seems to be telling truck drivers who are they're trying to scream at the top of their lungs sometimes we're tired of all these surveys. We want to see real parking places. We don't want to just see, truck parking information management systems that tell you that there's no parking here. We want to see pavement. And now we're having a research say that, well, don't worry, there really isn't a problem. It just seems to be a little bit of a slap in the face to drivers who have been saying this for a long time, that this is an issue. It's a safety issue, not just a productivity issue. So I would say frustration probably sums it up pretty well.
And the thing is that, and I appreciate you bringing in the Jason's Law conversation, because that was one of the things that I really wanted to hit on, because it steers me into another part of the discussion, Andrew. And part of that is, in that scenario, you see a lot of drivers that are frustrated. As a driver myself in my previous life, one of the things is that you arrive to a shipper, you've got their product on the truck and trailer, or their product on the trailer. You arrive a little bit early or what have you. You maybe got to deliver in the morning, and they say, hey, no, you can't park on site. You have to park away. Do you feel like that it should be a liability, and not even a type of liability? Let me use a different word, a responsibility for a shipper or a receiver to be able to accommodate truck parking to drivers that come in and out of that facility? Is that something that you feel it should be the case?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I understand maybe where they're coming from in a sense, but yeah, you hit it right on the head. I mean, it is their product. It's something that they're asking for, requiring. I mean, not providing space for their customers, and not only that, but not even having the proper amount of people on staff to unload those trucks in a safe, adequate manner, in a timely manner is the word I'm looking for. This kind of goes along with detention time as well. And that is a huge issue affecting the industry, and that, it seems like shippers and receivers view truck drivers as like a rolling warehouse, and they'll get to it when they want to. And that just creates inefficiencies throughout the supply chain. And so, yeah, I mean, you're going to have someone come and deliver. You should make room for them to be able to be in your property, and to allow them to have access to restrooms as well. I mean, it's ridiculous that that is even an issue in our day and age now, that truckers often deliver and they're not always even allowed to use the restroom facilities, and they could be waiting there for who knows how long.
The crazy thing is that's been going on I started back in 2000, late 99, 2000, when I got the opportunity to get indoctrinated into this wonderful industry. But man, we had the same issues back then though. You talk about parking, we talking about restroom uses. There was a lot of shippers that, you come to, I won't say a lot, but, a handful of shippers that you come to, and they're like, nah, you can't use a bathroom here. Nah, no, you can't park here. So that's always been an issue. So, OOIDA's been advocating with this for years now. We're talking about, at least from my knowledge, we're talking about 25 years. Why do you think that has not made any progress and change?
It seems like people aren't listening. Um, in general, the people who make the decisions in order to fund those sort of things or make those things happen, if there's not a financial incentive sometimes to actually make those things happen, they don't. They don't. They have other things that they're worried about, and so we finally have started to make progress, especially in truck parking, but also in the restroom access bill, which we have right now in Congress. But the Truck Parking Improvement Safety Act, which would dedicate $750 million to a fund that would be exclusively meant for truck parking, that has been something we've been fighting for a while, and it seems like we're so close to sealing that deal, to making that a reality, to provide parking and to express that this is really needed. And unfortunately, so that's kind of why we bring back to the research at hand. When it comes out and they make a statement that there's no real truck parking shortage, it's like we've been working on this so hard, and there are some people who they're looking for something like this so that they don't have to spend $750 million. They don't necessarily think it's that big of a deal. They have other fish to fry, and so any chance they can get to kind of take the off ramp and not do this, they're going to take it. And so this really fed right into that, which is why it's so frustrating from our point of view, because we have been, like you said, we have been working on this for decades, and we're just now starting to get it in front of lawmakers, regulators, where they're starting to see, hey, this is a real deal. This isn't just truck drivers complaining. This is something that we need to do, and we need to do it now.
So let's start talking about a little bit of data and facts. And I'm going to spit off some data to you and some facts to you. And let's just kind of tie that into and have discussion around that. So the first one is drivers spend 56 minutes a day searching for parking, driving an extra 15 miles and parking at the wrong location for 2 hours. What's your take on that? Accurate?
Well, it's not accurate, actually. And it's interesting. I'm glad that you mentioned that, because that is an often misquoted research. That research was done by ATRI, and even they will say this, that their studies often taken and misapplied. What that study found was not that truck drivers spend 56 minutes searching for truck parking, but rather that they stop early. They actually cut off their hours of service time by basically an hour in order to find truck parking. Not that it takes them that long to find it, because in this research, what they have done is they have applied that every single time, whether it be a 10-hour break or 30-minute break, that they are taking 56 minutes in order to find that parking location. And they're driving basically in a circle for 15 miles until they find it. And that's not what that study said. And so to take that out of context inflates what's really going on. And that, as you can see in the report itself, is part of the issue in its findings.
All right. Well, there are nearly 700,000 official truck parking spaces for 2.4 million trucks on the road each day, creating a difference of 1.7 million spaces. What's your thoughts about that data?
Again, I think that's wrong, incorrect. The how that data was created was using a proprietary model that doesn't actually explain how it was coming up with some of its figures, including how many active trucks there are on the roadway. There are some pretty good statistics available right now through government data sources, like BTS has what's called the VIAS survey, or Vehicle In Use Survey, which is going to be by far the most accurate data source for knowing how many Class 8 trucks, long haul trucks, are actually on the road right now. And they give a different figure. And on top of that, Jason's Law Jason's Law had an initial survey in 2015, but then they did it again in 2019, and they're actually working on a current one right now to update their findings. And that is going to be your most comprehensive study that's done on this issue. And it has found that there are about, I want to say it's like 300,000 truck parking places for overnight rest. So that's significantly lower than what was produced in that report. And the idea behind what was shared in that report is to say that there's plenty of truck parking available. We're just trying to connect the trucker to the right spot. But what we're saying, what I believe the data bears out, is that no, there isn't an adequate supply of truck parking, period.
So let me get this straight. I'm just going to just talk concrete to concrete. When we just look at overall available concrete per 70 plus feet of 80 feet of space needed to put a tractor trailer in there is not enough concrete in the United States right now to accommodate the amount of trucks that we have. True or false?
I mean, that's accessible for them. That's actually created for them. So another part of the study. So it's 313,000 spaces total. About 273,000 of those were private, and about 40,000 of those were public rest areas. So these are places where trucks actually park today. What the study tried to do, and I understand that, and actually, it's an admirable attempt to try and see what else can possibly be out there. But they pulled in entities that they might not have truck parking spaces at all. There was a kind of an arbitrary number given per entity type, per location, and then just multiplied across. So basically, these are theoretical parking spots that they mention in the study that don't really exist. They exist on paper maybe, but yeah, I mean, I know it sounds crazy that there isn't enough concrete for trucks to park, but that has been what truck drivers have been saying for a long time, is that there isn't adequate places. And that's why you have truck drivers saying, 70% of truck drivers saying that they park in unauthorized locations. So maybe there is enough concrete, but what is authorized and what is unauthorized is kind of the crux of the matter there.
You know, I'm glad you said that, Andrew. I am really glad you said that, because I'm going to give you an example, and I'm going to say something that I believe, just from my experience and just being on both sides. One of the things is that people want freight, right? So you want your Amazon delivered. When you want your Amazon delivered, right? You want your milk in the refrigerator with an expiration date that gives you enough time to pour a bowl of cereal in the morning, right? But people do not want trucks around them. And I'm going to tell you what I mean by that. Okay. I live in the Charlotte, North Carolina area, one of the busiest growing metro hubs in the US, right? We are actually accessible to I-85 and I-77. It is a massive transportation corridor. We literally have like 2 truck stops that are in the actual Charlotte area, right? One of them, and it's a pilot on Statesville Avenue, and you can look this up on Google if you want to. It's a pilot. It's got to be the smallest pilot I've ever seen in my life. You probably can put 3 trucks in that. I mean, not, and I'm exaggerating a little bit, but here's the crazy thing is, you can drive around the city. I'm going to talk about from my lens. You can drive around the city in any parts of the city, and you'll see trucks like piled up, parked on the off ramps, at all times of the day. You know why? It's because there's not a ton of truck parking in town. That's number one. Okay, cool. We get it. Everybody doesn't have truck parking. But you know what the bigger issue is? The bigger issue is that when there are people that want to go out and create privatized parking, guess what happens? Neighbors is like, yeah, I don't want that within 20 miles of my house. Like, I don't care what y'all do. We don't want the trucks in this area. So would you agree or disagree? You don't have to agree with what I'm saying. But the motoring public, the people that order this stuff are primarily, take that out. I can't say primarily because that's not the issue. But they contribute to the truck parking issue. Would you agree or would you disagree with that?
No, absolutely. Absolutely. You're totally correct. This is something that we've been following for a long time. The not in my backyard, the NIMBY folk, that they want the goods, but they don't want the trucks that actually bring the goods. And I think there's a disconnect between, honestly, I'm taking from my own experience, from my own background. I knew nothing about trucking. I had no idea how important they were. I thought they were a nuisance, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm just being honest. And not to realize that even the highway system that we have today was originally created not just for military, but for the transportation of freight and goods, for trade. Mm-hmm. It's actually for them, not for the passenger car. And I think the average American out there doesn't realize how important trucks are to what they have, and that the road system is actually for them. I hear people all the time saying, a truck shouldn't be allowed on the highway. They should have their own road. Like, you realize that it was made for them, right, and not you.
Yeah, right.
But it goes along with what you're saying. This misunderstanding, these assumptions people make about truck drivers in general that are just not true. That really they paint the industry in a bad light, and so that's something that we're always trying to fight OOIDA to try and improve the image of trucking. And I know we're not the only ones. I know others do as well. For people to understand how important they are, so that they don't push back. I mean, I think a few months ago we had a city in, we'll just say in Texas, that was reaching out because they were wanting to get an understanding of how many trucks were parking in their city because they wanted to prevent it. Basically, they wanted to push them out of their city limits. And not again a total misunderstanding of why you need them in the area to bring the goods that you have in your grocery store every day. You know, it's just mind blowing. I'm sure from your perspective, especially being a driver yourself, you understand full well like how
Yeah.
you this misunderstanding of how important truckers are.
I mean, that's to go without say. Like, you know, the country wouldn't exist without truck drivers. Period. We would like. I mean, when I say that, and I mean that with every ounce of blood
Absolutely.
in my body. Like, you stop trucks for a day and see what happens. But here's my problem. I'm gonna play devil's advocate because I have to, and because I want to make sure that we look at it from both sides of the lens, right? So when I think about just in my experience as a driver for as long as I driven, I seen some stuff out there, Andrew. Like there's some nasty dudes out there. Like when I'm talking about
There are.
nasty, there's some nasty dudes out there. And you know, and I think about that from a private standpoint. Like I think about back in the day, Walmarts were cool with putting a truck in the parking lot. Like they didn't really trip about it. But then dudes got nasty. You throwing away pee bottles, you know, you're putting your trash out, you know, you're leaving the parking lot like disgusting. And they're like at this point, like, no, I don't want that no more because you're running my customers off. I gotta pay my employees that's gotta do that. So now you created from your standpoint, just like you said, you got one bad apple that's ruining the barrel. But here's the issue, like, and I want to go a little further with that. So the same guys, and like I tell you, man, I'm telling you some of the clean stuff that I seen there. There's some nasty stuff that we seen in there. And if there's anybody that disagrees, then you're being stupid. But when you think about that part, and you think about the privatization of truck parking, now you got a lot of parking that's saying, hey, you know what? Nah, Andrew, you got to pay. You got to pay to park here. You know, it's going to cost you to park here. What's your feelings on paid parking? And what's OOIDA's stance on paid parking versus, is it something that's saying, hey, no, everything should be paid? Or is it like, you know what, this is a free economy. They need to have the ability to make choices. What's your stance on that?
Yeah, that's a good question. You bring up a good point. Yes, I mean there are always that bad actors, and until we as a trucking industry hold ourselves accountable too by how we treat things, whether it be physical location, how we manage and keep up after ourselves. That's important that we, in order to portray that image that we want, we have to be those people, right? But as far as paid trucking goes, and we've actually done a recent study in the end of last year that looked at this. We had about 1,200 respondents, and these are OOIDA members. And most people do not use truck parking, or paid truck parking, I'm sorry. About 50%. It was kind of almost 50-50. The interesting thing that I found is that for company drivers who do use truck parking or paid truck parking, their carriers do not reimburse them for the expense, which is a big issue. They can't write that off in their taxes, obviously, not like an owner operator could. So in general, we see that paid truck parking can be part of the solution, but it's just one more expense. I mean, truckers have to pay for so much, as you well know.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, different taxes with IFTA and IRP, your heavy, the highway use tax.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The 2290, and then you have permits and licensing. You have all these fees that you're constantly asked to pay, and this is one more thing. I do understand from the perspective of someone like a pilot. They have that concrete, they have that space, they want to keep it clean. That means they have to pay someone to take care of it. That means it has an extra cost. But we also see that that's not that's not the only solution. That's not the only way to go, but it can be part of the solution for the truck parking shortage problem. But in general, I would say that we would prefer to have parking that is free for truckers, but also see that there is a need at times for that paid trucking. But I hope that if you are paying for that space, that there is real value there. Sometimes what we have seen is some of these paid parking spaces, it's nothing but a glorified gravel lot. There's nothing there. There's no bathroom, there's no lighting, there's nothing, and yet they're paying for that spot. That's different than, say, an area where it's safe, it's clean, there is amenities available for you, maybe even food and what have you. Now that's a different story. So what they're offering, you know, you want to get something for what you're paying for. But also, if you're away from home 200 nights of the year, and you have to pay every night, I mean, that's a crazy amount of money. And that, I don't know how many truckers could share or could shoulder that burden, especially right now with the freight economy where it's been for the last 3 years. That's a pretty heavy burden.
Now, you mentioned another interesting point, and in the beautiful spirit of playing devil's advocate, I'm gonna give you a little something too. So you mentioned, okay, cool. Drivers, you got 50% drivers that choose to pay paid versus free. Cool, got it. But then you got the company driver that's saying, hey, I want to use the paid parking. But then we're saying, okay, well, the company should be reimbursing the drivers for the paid parking. So with that being said, so think about it from this perspective. And again, we're just going to throw it out there. If there are, let's say 2 paid parking spots and then there are 4 free parking spots within the same area, why should the business owner be responsible for compensating the employee for not choosing to use the most economical option? And again, I'm not saying I disagree with what you're saying. I'm not.
Right.
I want to have some dialogue and discussion on here. That's what we're all about.
Yeah, and I can understand from their perspective and what you're saying. I mean, they have a business, right? And what we have found, even in our surveys, what our members have seen, and especially in certain parts of the country, they actually they see paid parking spaces being unused. And so instead of going to that paid parking space, they might park in an unauthorized space.
Sure.
Because they don't want to pay that price for the principle of it. I mean, I think for our members and truck drivers in general, just the idea that, they pay for so much and just in general, and not always are those funds being used in an appropriate manner. And then to be asked to pay for it to them is a principle that's a bridge too far.
Yeah.
So they will actually choose an unauthorized location over something that's paid, and maybe it's maybe it's a better location, honestly, but they're not going to pick it because of the principle of it. So you have that aspect as well. But I do get it. I mean, this is a business. People have to make money to live in this world. And I think sometimes whatever side you're on, which is kind of what I feel like you're getting at, we don't often see the other person and what they need, and that they're not just trying to be, some kind of rude, they're not trying to be a thief and steal all of your money from you and all that kind of stuff, that they too have a family and they have to make a living too. And so it is good to have a conversation on both sides.
Today's episode is brought to you by Trucking Hub. Now listen, if you're still bouncing between 5 different logins just to run your trucking business, you're already behind. Trucking Hub is built by a carrier for carriers, and it puts everything under one roof, whether it be dispatch, safety, maintenance, and even accountant and a driver app. Their dispatch runs on PC Miler and Copilot navigation, so the miles are right the first time. Now the ELD is FMCSA certified, tamper-proof, and trusted since 2017. And if you want to keep it all in one lane, you can even roll in company phones, texting, video, and fax backed by nationwide LTE. Bottom line, this is the kind of system that you spend less time hopping and more time hauling. Plans start at just $29 per truck, no contracts, no hidden fees, and you can try it for free for 30 days. Check them out at their website and get your time back.
Man, I love that you surfaced that part. And that was probably, like, honestly, just we can not even talk about truck parking, and we can just talk about society as a whole. Like, we're so hell bent on what we feel is right that we don't open our ears up to listen to the other side and hear the other perspective behind it. And so, like, me, that's one of the parts of growth in my life as I got older, was to really look at both sides and slow down, and then really just encourage other people in conversation to do the same thing, regardless on how I feel about a subject. Being a former driver, like, truck parking was my issue when when I was driving with Schneider. When we had trip planning, back then they taught us how to trip plan the whole nine. That's when we were using motor carrier atlases versus GPS. So that's when you had to pick out 3 or 4 stops, because if the first one's full, then you go to the second one, because you never knew. Now you just GPS or whatever. But the thing about that is like, back then, man, they taught us so well on how to plan and how to navigate that, and we would always start our truck parking exercise, or our truck parking. It's almost like your final descent on a plane. I would always start my truck parking final descent an hour before my shift was over. Just like you said, like, it's funny you said that, because I did the exact same thing. Like, an hour before, I would start, looking for that final descent, right? And I think that that's one of the biggest things. But I'm gonna tell you another thing, and this is one of the other issues that aren't looked at so much as it should be on the one-sided table. When you go park at a truck stop, and I've done them before myself, it'll be 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. I am dead tired. I'm looking for a place to pull over. I'm just going to pull into this Lowe's or this TA. I'm going to pull in. I'm going to set my air brakes. I'm going to go head on to the back. I'm going to go to sleep. I'm going to get up in the morning when it's time for me to get up, and I'm going to leave. You know what I didn't do? I didn't go inside, and I didn't patronize. I didn't buy anything at that restaurant. I didn't buy any fuel particularly at that. I didn't go get any gummies or coffee. I just used it for the spot that I needed to, and then I left. If I'm not going to patronize, I'm taking that spot away from somebody that possibly can patronize, or that had the intention on patronizing.
Right.
So with that being said, with me sitting there, with my truck sitting there, to the business owner who has to keep that area up, your truck, Andrew, is more valuable to put in that spot, because at least you went and bought some gummy bears, than my truck is. You see what I'm saying? So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So here's my, and this is, man, I'm an advocate for the industry, for what's right is right and what's wrong is wrong. If you're gonna pull up and it's free parking, then the least thing that you can do is go inside and buy some gummy bears.
You're right, absolutely.
And the bigger thing too, because of that, you have to think about the fact that you mentioned, okay, cool, it might be a gravel lot, no amenities, no bathroom or anything, but I do want us to think about the fact that, well, Andrew went out, Andrew bought the lot, Andrew went and got a loan for the lot, Andrew pays taxes on the lot. We might not have, it might not be in the best shape, but Andrew's paying somebody to keep the grass down, or keep the gravel away, or maybe he had to buy the fence to go around it. Maybe not. So when I think about that how do we ensure that we don't weaponize research in ways that silence the very people that it was meant to help? Because like you said, man, like, it might not be a living benefit, because I might pull into the lot. I'm like, man, ain't nobody using this thing no way. And look at these big old potholes in here. I'm paying $20 a night. What am I paying for? So how do we address that?
No, that's a really good point. And you bring up, many interesting points there. But, in research in particular, what I've seen, and it's very difficult, because it can be used, you can use it to weaponize. I mean, I'm sure everyone has seen research that says one thing, and then, I'll just pick something like coffee. You have one side that says coffee's bad, and then another research that says coffee's good. And one thing that we try to do as much as possible is to be unbiased as much as we can be, but that's very difficult in general. because everyone has bias. And I think that's important to understand, kind of going along with what you're saying about seeing the other side, is we often have our own bias. We don't
Yeah.
think of it as being biased, but we
Yeah.
really do. And it's really hard to create any research that truly is open. And that's why you need some of that. I mean, there's an issue in research in general where we're not stating a clear hypothesis. We're not showing how to reduplicate our work to come to a similar conclusion. We're not checking ourselves with limitations. We're not expressing what those limitations might be. And we're not doing the most rigorous research, literature research, where we're looking at other research and what they have done to see different sides of the issue. And that really makes everyone better when you give everyone a seat at the table to talk about the issue. It also, to me, would make that more reliable, more valid, more something that someone's going to lean on because they've seen that it is, as much as possible, unbiased. So we have to be really careful in what we do. We try to do that in the foundation as much as we can, that we're not just trying to find what we want, a problem in search of a solution, or however you want to say that, which sometimes we see a lot. We see FMCSA do that, and we see industry do it as well. So having conversations like these can be very helpful to see all sides, so that we're not trying to, engineer what we want in order to reach a predetermined end. And I fear that the research that we're talking about here, that is what happened. And one thing that you always need to do in any sort of research is follow the money. Who paid for that research? And whatever it is, you need to look at it because that does play a role in perhaps what the findings will suggest.
Well, at the end of the day, you can steer any research to meet any narrative that you wanted to.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
If I wanted to, I can create research to create any narrative, to support any narrative. We're all smart enough that we know how to use that. One of the things that when you think about is that there are 275 million that was dedicated to parking solutions, right? Which, in the grand scheme of things, that's not a lot of money. What's the biggest threat to that money actually solving the problem?
What's the biggest threat for that money solving the problem?
What do you think? Like, they said, okay, look, all right, we solved it. Here's 275 million to solve the problem. Well, what's the threat to that? What's the limitations to that?
Well, it can only go so far, but the other, maybe this is not exactly what you're getting at, but what I see too is if you put down that money and then you think the problem is over, and not realizing that as demand increases, as population levels rise, you're going to need more and more available. So that's another reason why I think this issue has become more to the forefront today, is because there's always been a bit of a truck parking shortage, right?
Mhm.
But as we go on, we need more trucks, we have more goods, more things are being moved. And also the way the economy works from, just from that Amazon kind of model where you need things today, that means you're going to need more truck parking. And so staying ahead of it and not realizing or not thinking that, I've finished what I need to, I've completed the issue or dealt with the issue, and now that we're good. So this $250 million even that we were hoping to see in the next highway transportation bill, that's not going to be the answer to the problem either. It's going to need to continue. This is a continual conversation that we need to have. So part of what we're trying to do is just making sure people are aware that this is an issue, to put it in front of their minds, to realize that you can't just throw some money at it and it's going to go away. This is an ongoing problem.
So should states be required from OOIDA's stance to your stance, do you believe that the state should be required to report parking utilization, not just supply?
Yeah, I mean, that would be fantastic. I think a lot of states are starting to do that if they're not already, just because they are required to put together a state freight plan, and they need to put that into a plan, and then it actually has to be approved, if I'm not mistaken, by Federal Highway. So a lot of them look at truck parking. In fact, OOIDA, the foundation, as well as I know ATRI, we have helped a number of states do this kind of research to reach out to drivers that are going through that state and trying to find what are the truck parking places, the bottlenecks and the problems in their state in particular. So yeah, I mean, that would be very helpful in general to have live information, real-time information coming from a state level not just a national level of what is going on and what they're trying to do to fix it. We would love to see that kind of information.
Why do you don't think private companies have come to take the stance on that then? I mean, it's why do we have to wait on the states?
Well, and that's a good point too. I mean, the states are mainly going to be looking at public rest areas. They're not going to necessarily, they might include the private, but that's not necessarily their purview because their money, the funding that they are going, it's going to go into a public rest area.
Correct.
And so for the private side, I hate to make a suggestion or advise
make it.
But their business would actually profit from there being somewhat of a shortage, right? I mean, if you play that to its logical conclusion, they might actually benefit from there being a shortage of truck parking. And so you often have an issue with private truck stops and public rest areas. I mean, even the fact that public rest areas are not able to have restaurants and food and things of that nature, like even during COVID, when things were getting shut down, we had asked, OOIDA had asked if we could here just in Missouri go do a rest area not that far and fund a food truck. And we were told we couldn't do that. And that has been a rule for a very long time. And so there's interest, right? Like, just like you said, there's interest in every area. And I hate to say that I'm not trying to make a nefarious type of suggestion.
No, I get it.
But I think that does play a role in some of this as well.
So what kind of feedback are you hearing from OOIDA members just on like the frustrations? Like, do you feel like there's some folks that are growing tired? Is there a divide?
Yeah.
Like, what are you hearing from your members?
I mean, yeah, from our members, it is a frustration. I can't tell you how many truck parking surveys I've done or been a part of. And we always allow for there to be an open comment section, right?
Yeah.
Not just check the box. We want to hear exactly what they think. And there are so many people who will say, I'm so tired of these surveys. I'm sick of it. I want to see real parking. I want to see the actual pavement. And I know that there's also this big push for technology. MATSO, which is a bunch of states in the Midwest, basically got a few years ago, or a number of years ago now, like $25 million to implement this system that would show or tell truckers where parking was. You've seen the signs, right? That 190 miles from here, there's so many spaces available. It takes a lot of money to put in those systems. So rather than spend $25 million on concrete, we spent $25 million to tell people what they already know. And maybe not every truck driver feels that.
Do they already know, though?
They're pretty frustrated about that sort of thing. They view that as not using those resources in the best manner, like it's a waste of money.
So, and now I'm gonna play the other side again. So you gave me a check for $275 million and say, hey, Adam, I need you to take that $275 million and I need you to create as many truck parking spaces available as possible.
Right.
I would probably say that I'm going to play other side. You give me $275 million, I'm going to develop technology to help you navigate to the closest available truck parking. I'm going to create a solution via application, artificial intelligence, and maybe a little bit of collaboration from the private sectors to determine, like, hey, your truck is here. You have 6 hours of drive time available. If you drive this far right now, it's predicted to have this many spaces by the time you get there based on the utilization details, because Andrew, we got all the data. We know from a utilization standpoint what truck stops have the most parking at what times and which ones have the least parking at what times. So with that predictive information using artificial intelligence, I'm just taking $275 million. I'm taking $275 million and I might apply it a little bit more to a solution that can help out more people versus $275 million. And I'm able to carve out maybe 400, 500 parking spots. So
that's a fair point.
And that's me playing devil's advocate. That's not me saying.
No, I mean, that's good because truckers need to realize that side as well. Because obviously, what they see is their reality, and it's
Sure.
very difficult to get your headspace into what someone else is experiencing, right? Kind of what we talked about, putting on someone else's shoes, basically.
Sure.
And it's very hard for them to see that. What they see is I'm struggling to find a place, and $25 million. While we know that really can't create that many spaces,
Yeah.
honestly, 275 million. That's only going to create what, maybe 1,000 spaces. It depends on how they build it. It's not,
And
it's
where?
so, yeah. And where is it going to be? In a place where you actually want it to be? Or are you going to be able to find it and have access? So that's absolutely true. That's why it's good for us to come together and have those conversations to realize, hey, things are being done and people are trying. And I think that alone can take off some of the stress. And there's so much stress and anxiety and hate sometimes.
Oh my
When,
God, man.
people don't. And so when you see that people are trying, I think that can bring down the level a little bit. So it's good that we're able to have these conversations.
No, it's great. And it's like, to me, the unfortunate thing is that you played a 200 and set, not saying you, but I'm saying that if you played a $275 million carrot, then people that may not understand that that's only going to create a limited amount, a very limited. When I talk about maybe 1,000 truck spots, maybe, dude, that
Right.
is not a lot at all. That's not going to
No.
help out a lot of people at all. But when people that don't know see, oh, they just approved 275 million, then all of a sudden we're high-fiving and we're celebrating. But I'd rather take that 275 mil and create a solution that can make it easier for everybody. Now, it might not allow, you might not be one of the 1,000 trucks that goes through this place that $275 million has created spacing for.
Right.
But how about the entire industry? How can we take this and make it better for the industry? Because we've been fighting truck parking as an industry that I know of. And as long as I've been, 25 years, man, that's a long time, dude. We're talking about the same thing 25 years later. And we're still arguing with each other on who's right or who's wrong. Or we're still saying, well, no, you're a dummy. And but nobody has
Yeah.
really created that solution.
Yeah, and you're hitting at what we've been trying to stress for like this whole time is that all these options should be on the table. We shouldn't
Absolutely.
we shouldn't pigeonhole ourselves into one simple solution like you know uh, the truck parking safety management fund or bill that isn't the only solution, right? We need all of these things to bring everything to the table because you do bring a good point, and that's kind of what the research is trying to point to is that there are available spaces that aren't being utilized, and can we connect truckers to that? Uh, but the key is to always to note that there still is an issue, and that's really important. There is a shortage. There is truly a shortage. So what are the best solutions? You always, and when I go to different government functions, they're always talking about their toolkit. What are all the things in their toolkit?
Yeah.
So public rest areas is one, private is one. Is there another way to connect people to other parking sources? That could definitely be another. And so we need to include all of these on the table.
And I agree. And I think also too, more importantly too, is our definition. And I'm going to give you an example, and I may go a little bit off tangent here, but I think by definition, we have to be a lot more understanding that some definitions are more generalized than others. And what I mean by that is that the word shortage, the you we have defined the word shortage and associated with a lot of different things, from shortage of diesel mechanics to shortage of drivers to shortage of truck parking. So now we've generalized the term shortage in terms of the availability. So we have associated shortage with availability. The only issue, and this is for the folks that look at both sides and open your eyes up. And I'm gonna give you an example. Andrew, if I gave you 20 trucks today, right? And you're in Kansas City, Missouri, home of the best barbecue in the United States. If I gave you 20 RGN trucks and put all 18 speed manuals in those trucks, and I said, hey, Andrew, I need you to fill those trucks within 30 days. And then I went over here and I gave them to Adam. I gave 20 dry vans with automated transmissions in them. Say, hey, Adam, you fill these trucks in 30 days. When Andrew and Adam comes back to the boss's table at the end of the 30 days,
Yep.
Andrew's probably going to say that there's a driver shortage.
Yep. It'd be very hard. Yep.
It would be hard for Andrew to say that, man, he may not use the word shortage, but he's going to say, hey, man, I've been working my ass off and I cannot put somebody behind these drivers just can't qualify for what I have.
Yep. Yep.
So when I look at truck parking as being a shortage or not a shortage, are we using the right terms? Because
Sure. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
There may be, like you said, there may be plenty of concrete, but there's a big old sign that when I'm going down the highway says no trucks through this area. Turn your Jake brakes off, whatever. So it's not truck friendly. So you see what I'm saying?
Yes. Where are those parking spaces matters a lot, because you might have areas
there you go
where there isn't a lot of populace and they have truck parking and they have plenty there. In fact, they have they're not lacking for availability.
Right.
But then you take a place in the middle of a city like where you are in Charlotte, and there is a lack of availability. So, and that is very true, and that's hard to make a big, broad statement. And we do need to keep that in mind, that it might be a shortage in one sense, in one area, in one location at one time.
Correct.
Whereas in another place, there's no issue whatsoever.
There you go.
So we want to make sure that we're providing those solutions, especially in places that actually matter.
You know, and that's great, because in Charlotte, there is a parking shortage from a optical and practical perspective.
Right.
There is plenty land in Charlotte, dude. Like, I see trees everywhere that need to be mowed down and put pavement on. But ultimately, practically wise, and the ability after to utilize it, there's a utilization issue there. So my last question for you, man, this has been a good conversation, man. My last question for you is that if you could change one thing about the way parking gets talked about in DC, what would it be?
Oh, man, that's a tough question. Well, from my limited perspective, because I'm not one of the guys on Capitol Hill, but the understanding that it is very, very important, that it is a safety issue in particular. I think that is lost on a lot of people, that they don't realize the number of crashes that do happen in unauthorized locations, and that usually when they do happen, they're fatal. And that's obviously, at the end of the day, we are all about safety. That's what we want to see. We want to see everyone be able to go home to their families. And so this is a safety issue in particular. And so it's worth the investment to save lives. I mean, we're all about saving lives. FMCSA, that's in their mission statement, to reduce fatalities and accidents and injuries, right?
Yeah.
Well, this is something that we can see will make a real impact today. We focus on technology, and I'm not saying technology is bad, but it seems like we want to put all of our money in one basket.
Sure.
This is the answer to save, or to answer all the safety problems, when it's really, there's other things that we could do, and things that would provide a bigger return on investment, like truck parking, will make real change in the industry. So if just getting people to realize that, I think, would be huge.
No, that's an amazing point. And again, man, today's conversation, man, we could have gone on for 2 hours, man. But ultimately, I think that one of my biggest takeaways from this conversation, and we both were able to walk away from this conversation by having an amicable discussion, being able to see things from a different lens, being able to have real conversations, and then be potentially able to meet in the middle somewhere. And I think that that's where we're lost. And I use this platform to talk trucking, but I got to realize that it's okay to talk. to talk reality. And I think that we as a society have lost ourselves in being able to have conversations with things that you might not agree with, or you may agree or disagree, and you don't know how to handle yourself and conduct yourselves in those conversations. So I appreciate you playing along, because I'm the type of guy, I'm gonna push both sides, because I want people to think, and I want people to not be so closed boxed, because closed box thinking has left us in a 25-year lag on where we should be by now. And
Absolutely.
that's where I want to go. So I just appreciate you for joining us, representing OIDA today, and really spending time with us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Anytime.
So, all right, everyone, that's a wrap for this episode of The Long Haul. And once again, big thanks to Andrew King for coming on and giving us that deeper lens into the truck parking crisis and the research that just needs to be called out. But here's the truth. We don't fix this by ignoring drivers, and we sure don't fix it with shallow press releases. If you got any value from today's conversation, go ahead and share this with someone who needs to hear it, especially if they've ever said there's plenty of truck parking out there. Tap subscribe so you don't miss what's next, and head over to www.freightwaves.com/playbook to get on the newsletter list. We break down stories like this every single week. Until next time, keep it safe, keep it moving, and always keep your voice in the conversation. Take care, everybody.